They had seen war before. The Galactic Concord had charted blood across 1,000 stars. They had witnessed extermination campaigns that scrubbed civilizations from memory, weapons that burned atmospheres, viruses that rewrote biology. But none of them were prepared for what they encountered on Kalos 4. It started with a distress call. Routine. Contain and cleanse. Biocontaminant Class 11. Likely fauna growth on an unstable terraforming site. An apex predator had been sighted, a mercolith, thought to be extinct, a relic from the genetic uprisings. The Concord dispatched its finest. Hundreds of soldiers from 6 species, equipped with thermoplasma rifles, kinetic suppression drones, and AI-assisted armor capable of predicting attacks before they happened. The initial drop was calm. Then, all telemetry went dark. What returned were screams. Mutilated feeds streamed for 10 minutes before cutting to black. One squad made it back. Only one. They didn't walk, they crawled. Covered in blood that wasn't all their own, armor shredded, eyes wide, words incoherent. The commanders rewound the footage. Something massive. Scaled. Fast. Invisible to sensors, impervious to weapons. One soldier could be heard whimpering. It doesn't die. It laughs when we fire. Orbital scans confirmed movement across Sector 12. Refugee shelters, 3,000 civilians. No backup would arrive in time. Then, one of the analysts suggested it. Not as a recommendation, but as a joke. The human. He was a prisoner of the Concord. A relic from a forgotten Earth conflict. No bionics. No implants. No armor. He had been captured a decade ago after disabling a fleet squad with rudimentary tools and what official reports called unjustifiable physical persistence. The record described him as feral, dangerous, impossible to contain without stasis. Concord ethics dictated his preservation, but never his release. Until now. Desperation overruled protocol. The request was authorized. One condition: full remote surveillance. Let the others see what a human really was. The chamber opened with a hiss. He stepped out slowly. Unchained. Unarmed. He didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He merely nodded once when told where the threat was. The operatives watching from orbit commented on his gait. Too relaxed, inefficient posture exposed vital points. The xenobiologists smirked. The strategists calculated his odds. 1 in 9 billion. The audience widened as feeds were routed to central military observatories. Some tuned in out of curiosity. Others came for entertainment. It was expected to last 7 minutes, maximum. The human moved through the ravaged terrain with unsettling ease. Corpses lay mangled across the site. His expression didn't change. The apex predator's tracks were evident. Massive depressions, deep claw grooves, heat residue. The human knelt by a broken drone, casually picked up a shard of metal, and continued walking. There was no urgency in his pace. No fear. The thermal scanners flared. Movement ahead. Trees splitting, earth tearing. The mercolith emerged. 12 feet tall, armored plates, muscle cords grown for burst speed assaults. It let out a roar calibrated to trigger paralyzing fear in lesser species. The human didn't even blink. Analysts whispered that he might be in shock. The mercolith charged. The human didn't run. He sidestepped barely. The claws missed him by inches. Then he leapt, not away but forward. Onto its back. The alien spectators collectively froze. The creature thrashed. The human climbed. Hands found purchase on armored joint. He drove the metal shard into its side, twisted. Blood gushed. The creature screamed. Its tail whipped around, throwing him off. He hit the ground hard. Shoulders dislocated. Bones likely cracked. He stood up. Popped the joint back into place. The mercolith roared again, this time not as a threat, but in pain. The human walked toward it. No weapons. No armor. Just blood. His own and the predator's. He ducked under the next swipe, grabbed the limb, and yanked. Ligaments tore. Then came the sound. Wet, fibrous, visceral. the sound of a predator screaming in disbelief. The human climbed again, this time to its head. He struck its eye with his thumb, not to blind but to enrage. The creature slammed into trees, rocks, everything. But the human held on. The Merkilith tried to burrow, retreat, something it had never done. The human dragged its head back, exposed the throat, and plunged both hands into the vulnerable gap between chitin plates. The feed showed what no viewer expected. The Merkilith died slowly. Not from shock. From trauma. From something it didn't understand, pain it had never been designed to feel. The human didn't flinch. Didn't gloat. He simply tore until the life stopped. The body slumped. He stood atop it, chest heaving. His eyes met the drone camera. Every alien watching felt it. A silence older than war. This wasn't victory. It was revelation. A creature bred to kill had just been reduced to meat by something the galaxy had dismissed as obsolete. One by one, the observers deactivated their commentary feed. One commander whispered to his aide, "We've been measuring power wrong." A high priest of the Verni Empire fainted. A biotechnologist vomited. The Concord director of military protocol requested immediate classification of all Earth-related files. The human sat beside the carcass, wiped blood from his face, and waited. Rescue teams were dispatched. None approached. Not directly. They left supplies from afar. He didn't react. Just sat in silence. Analysts ran comparisons. Muscle density ratios. Pain tolerance. Battle psychology. None of it explained what they saw. One scientist wrote in her report, he was hurt. Bleeding. Outmatched. But he chose to go toward the thing that kills armies. And he smiled. The Concord issued a temporary planetary evacuation. Not because of the Merkilith. Because of the human. A containment unit was suggested. He refused. He simply walked away from the corpse and vanished into the tree line. No sensor could track him. Biometric scans returned null. He was there. And then he wasn't. Weeks later, rumors spread. A Vraki scout ship had crashed. Survivors claimed they were hunted, one by one. The only thing seen was a human silhouette. Governments denied it. Civilian channels didn't. Images of blood-streaked terrain emerged. Photos of claw marks, clearly made by human hands, etched into alloy hulls. Concord internal documents shifted Earth's classification from primitive to cautioned isolation. One admiral wrote, "We've been watching them evolve, but never considered that they stopped needing to." Across star systems, old archives were unlocked. Incidents forgotten or buried resurfaced. A diplomatic envoy massacred on a jungle moon by a single human child. A space pirate fleet routed by 4 humans armed with tools meant for mining. A legendary duel between a human and an N3 warlord. The warlord was considered unbeatable. He was never seen again. The human was found eating his meal with the warlord's blade in the ground beside him. The council reconvened. No longer about strategy but survival. The question wasn't how to control humans, it was how to never need to. Xenologists reclassified humanity as adaptive apex entities. Not because of tech, intellect, or scale, but because they were something else, something every species had forgotten existed. Predators who didn't kill for territory, resources, or politics. Predators who killed because something challenged them, and who didn't stop until it didn't move. The live feeds didn't lie. The beast was dead. The human was alive. The galaxy wasn't ready to accept either fact. The Concord tried to bury the footage, but it had already spread beyond containment. Military academies replayed the encounter in stunned silence. Scientists dissected every frame, trying to decode how a soft-skinned biped could rupture a species with reinforced bone and layered muscle. Religious cults declared the event a divine omen. Others called it a hoax, but the data was uncorrupted. Every reading authentic. Every scream unfiltered. Commanders questioned whether it was a fluke, a genetic anomaly. Surveillance requested his DNA profile. They got nothing back. Earth didn't respond to biometric authentication requests. One operative joked Earth had no idea what its people were capable of. Another suggested Earth knew, and just didn't care what the rest of the galaxy thought. The debate didn't matter. The truth stood, dripping in blood and grinning at the cameras. And somewhere beyond the frontier, that truth was walking free. The human vanished from Concord oversight within hours. No trace, no signal trail, no thermal markers. He didn't just disappear. He ghosted their most advanced tracking systems like they were obsolete toys. In the following days, reports poured in. A slaughtered black market hunting camp on Taucinder 6. All the bodies mutilated in the same way the Merkilith had been killed, dissected, shredded, crushed. The camp had been trafficking apex predators. One of them was a Merkilith egg. There were no survivors. Alien media spiraled. Governments began pulling assets away from Earth-adjacent sectors. Outposts were shut down. Trade routes rerouted. Probes sent into Sol system ceased transmitting after atmospheric entry. Earth didn't fire a shot. It didn't need to. The galaxy blinked first. Panic didn't spread through screams. It spread through silence. The human hadn't made a statement. He hadn't sent a message. He was a message, and it was one no one wanted to receive. A coalition of 3 major powers formed a response committee. Their goal: locate, contain, or eliminate the subject. They called him Target Theta. 53 recon drones were deployed across 4 systems. 47 were destroyed. The remaining 6 sent back static. No images. No coordinate. Just raw audio. Wet, labored breathing, bones snapping, and quiet footsteps approaching before complete silence. It wasn't warfare. It was something colder. The Council theorized it had unleashed not just a human, but a remnant of a forgotten evolutionary branch. The archives were re-examined. Hidden files from first contact eras emerged. They'd always known humans were different. Just never worth the trouble. Too scattered, too emotional, too contradictory. But they hadn't watched closely enough. They'd seen tribes. Now they saw the apex of a predator chain that hadn't ended, it had just gone dormant. A high-ranking strategist from the Xenar Dominion issued an internal report with one line underlined twice: "Do not engage in environments they consider personal." No one understood what that meant until a strike team landed on the moons of Therax Delta, where a lone human had been spotted entering a wildlife sanctuary. They brought thermal suppressors, motion scramblers, neural dampeners. Within 15 minutes, all vital signs were flatlined. The final video feed showed one human sprinting at speeds thought biologically impossible, ripping through armor, disabling weapons mid-trigger pull, and tearing out exosuits from within. There was no screaming. Just gurgling. The unit commander was found embedded in the wall, bones inverted, eyes open. The sanctuary was left untouched. Wildlife never fled. It was as if the human hadn't entered the environment to kill, but to be at peace. And peace was what he took, violently, from anyone who disturbed it. Back at Concord's Central Command, internal briefings began referencing Earth as dormant Class Zeta. They no longer measured humans by technology or diplomacy. They measured by potential kinetic disruption ratio, how many lives one human could end without support. The numbers didn't align with known logic. Simulation systems crashed under projected scenarios. It wasn't sustainable. Nothing was. The most optimistic algorithm capped planetary survival at 23 hours under hostile human incursion. And that was a single combatant. Theories shifted. Maybe humans weren't broken. Maybe they were the standard, and the rest of the galaxy had devolved. Maybe it wasn't their strength that was terrifying, but their will. Machines failed. Empires crumbled. Ecosystems collapsed. But the human in the footage hadn't even paused after dislocating his own shoulder. He'd simply corrected it and kept fighting like pain was a forgotten myth. Attempts to understand Earth's ecosystem failed. Probe after probe returned corrupted data. AI surveillance malfunctioned. Hypotheses emerged. Earth itself was sabotaging technology. But the truth was simpler. The planet didn't recognize the galaxy's tools. It didn't play by galactic rules. Its creatures didn't fear death. They adapted to it. Earth wasn't a cradle. It was a crucible. On a mining colony orbiting Zarnus Prime, workers reported a lone figure walking through a contaminated zone without a mask. Radiation levels would kill most species in minutes. He didn't even cough. Cameras watched him lift a malfunctioning reactor core by hand, set it down outside the blast radius, then walk away. The site went dark an hour later. Concord Command sent a cleanup crew. They found no body. Just footprints in the dust and claw marks around the reactor like something had tried to stop him, and failed. Religious leaders convened for the first time in centuries. Not to worship, but to ask one another what came next. One high priest from the Lyran Nebula posed a question none had dared to say aloud. What if Earth is the galaxy's reset mechanism? It wasn't prophecy. It was fear. The kind buried under ceremony and science, now bubbling to the surface. Alliance networks labeled him an anomaly. Yet the data didn't support that. Earth had over 7 billion more. Some older. Some younger. Some trained. Some feral. All unknown. Their society was built around limitation, not because of weakness but because of what happened when the leash slipped. Every file recovered from old Earth expeditions showed the same traits: resistance to control, acceleration under pressure, strength without augmentation. But the most consistent pattern was psychological. They didn't break. Not in defeat. Not in loss. Not even in death. One log detailed a shipwrecked human who had lived 3 years inside a predator-infested jungle, rebuilt a transmitter from animal bones and debris, and sent a distress signal using planetary echoes and his own heartbeat. When Concord Labs studied captured human physiology, they found inconsistencies. Brain patterns shifted during stress. Neural pathways restructured in real time. Pain tolerance increased inversely to survival odds. One scientist noted, "They don't resist the impossible. They become it." The lead analyst shut the file and sent one order: cease all human experimentation. No more tests. No more monitoring. Just containment. Or distance. Military strategists grew divided. Some wanted eradication. Others argued annihilation would provoke a response no empire could survive. One fleet admiral warned, "We tried to kill one. He killed a god we made to kill armies. You want to kill a planet full of him?" They couldn't speak. Not because their translators failed, but because every neural node in the chamber was overwhelmed by a single, shared emotion: terror. The broadcast looped in silence, again and again. The predator, classified as a Nargathi apex, one of the most lethal organisms ever discovered, roared, lunged, and then was stopped. Not by lasers. Not by kinetic pulses. Not by technology. By a single human. The creature's momentum shattered against the man's outstretched arm like water on stone. The human's feet didn't shift. His other hand rose and wrapped around the predator's throat. And then, with the kind of strength the Galactic Archive had never catalogued, he lifted it, roared back at it, and crushed its neck with a single, deliberate twist. That sound. That crunch. It haunted them all. The Nargathi were engineered to wipe out entire colonies. They weren't meant to be fought, only avoided or bombarded from orbit. And yet here was one, sprawled out across the blood-soaked terrain of Vornak, 3, twitching in death spasms while the humans stood panting, not even bleeding. The footage had been captured by a Zalari observer drone. The drone hadn't survived, but its final transmission did. Now, that same recording played before the United Galactic Council, projected over 100 silent delegates. Their races varied. Their reactions didn't. The High Scholar of the Vral Confederation finally spoke. His voice trembled through the speakers. "Are we absolutely certain it was unaided?" The analyst from the Arctel Consortium shook his head, not to deny, but because he'd already checked 100 times. No external shielding. No cybernetic enhancements. Vital signs recorded during the event indicate elevated adrenaline, but all readings within baseline human tolerance. He was unaided. No one asked how that was possible. No one dared. The question had already become irrelevant. The galaxy had known that humans were dangerous. What they hadn't understood, what they couldn't comprehend, was that their danger wasn't just in their weapons or their warships. It was them, their flesh, their will, their refusal to die. Captain Verax of the Rulkari Legion leaned forward. His race had once fought humanity and lost. He carried the scars, both in tissue and pride. This wasn't an elite soldier. This wasn't one of their veterans. It was a civilian response team. Look at his designation. They did. And for the first time, the true weight of the event hit. The man who had torn the Nargathi apart was registered as a rescue paramedic on Vornak 3's emergency medical staff. His role was to evacuate injured colonists. He wasn't supposed to fight. And yet, when the Predator threatened the evac shuttle, he stepped forward. He didn't run. He didn't hesitate. He attacked. The Threx diplomat muttered something in his native click. The translator stuttered before settling on a word. Insanity. No one corrected him. Because that was what it looked like, until you understood that it wasn't madness. It was instinct. An instinct refined through 1,000 generations of struggle. Humanity didn't wait for predators. They became the thing predators feared. In the aftermath, Vornak 3's entire colonist population had survived, thanks to the man's actions. The only confirmed death was the Nargathi. Interviews with the survivors had been equally unsettling. They didn't speak of fear. They described the man as focused, calm, and quiet. One even added, "It wasn't the first time we'd seen him do something like that." That comment had sparked further investigation. Within an hour, Council archivists had compiled a report cataloging at least 7 similar incidents from other human colonies. Always isolated. Always spontaneous. No reports filed. No medals awarded. Just humans doing what humans did when pushed too far, ending the threat. The Council fell into an emergency session. The humans hadn't sent a representative. They didn't need to. The footage was their ambassador now. What negotiation could follow that display? What policy? What warning? Some demanded sanctions. Others wanted stricter controls on human expansion. But the smarter ones, the ones who'd lived through the human-Ultron conflicts, remained silent. They knew what the others hadn't yet learned. You can't contain something that doesn't accept containment. Humanity didn't just break limit. They redefined them. On the edge of the galaxy, the human paramedic had already returned to work. His name was Aaron Mendez. He didn't carry a weapon. He didn't boast. When asked about the Predator, he said only, "It tried to get into the shuttle. That wasn't gonna happen." No fury. No ego. Just certainty. That's what truly horrified the aliens. Because the strength was one thing. The ability to kill with bare hands another. But the worst part, the part they kept circling back to, was how normal he seemed. He wasn't celebrated. He wasn't unique. He was human. And that meant there were more like him. A lot more. Galactic analysts worked overtime. Simulations were run. Theoretical battles staged. None of it helped. Every time the parameters included human adaptability, the simulations broke. The models couldn't handle it. The humans didn't just win, they devastated. Even scenarios designed to be unwinnable ended in stalemates or shocking upset. One simulation analyst simply wrote in her report, "You can't win against something that never accepts defeat." Worse yet, more colonies filed in similar reports. More humans doing the unthinkable. One farmer on Silesh, 9 survived a skirmish with a pack of armored raptors using a spade and a fence post. A teacher on an ice moon redirected a plasma engine to freeze an alien parasite hive. They weren't warriors. They weren't elite. They were just people. What became clear, over and over, was that it didn't matter what title a human carried. When their backs were against the wall, when others needed saving, they transformed into something else. Something ancient. Something unstoppable. Back in the council chamber, the vote was held. Sanctions were rejected. Trade restrictions denied. Defensive alliances dissolved in quiet resignation. Everyone knew the truth. If humanity ever decided to turn its full attention to conquest, there would be no stopping it. Not with fleets. Not with treaties. Not with anything. But that wasn't the worst-case scenario. The worst case was this: they wouldn't need to. They'd just send someone like Aaron. And then another. And another. Not as soldiers, but as people doing what came naturally. Protecting. Defending. Overcoming. Killing when they had no other choice. Killing so effectively, so completely, that even apex predators from the void screamed in dying confusion. The broadcast finally stopped. Silence hung thick in the chamber. One alien, whose name history wouldn't record, whispered aloud what they all feared. They aren't evolution's mistake. They're its final answer.